Hi guys, good morning. We're on to another days of online learning. So yesterday, just to recap, we did on variables. I teach you how to identify IVs and DVs. So none of you guys texted me, so I'm assuming that everyone have a clear idea sudah about the variable. So filia. So today I'm gonna introduce you to another key term that is also relatable to yang kemarin. This one we're gonna learn about hypothesis. So today we're gonna learn about hypothesis. I don't know if you have heard this word before, but I think it's quite a common word to be used. Like people would say, I hypothesize this. Okay? So what is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is basically a prediction. It's a proposed explanation made on limited evidences as a starting point for further investigation. So hypothesis ini is a prediction. Prediction yang kena buat by a psychologist or by a researcher before they start their investigation, before they start their research. Okay? So macam it's important for them to create a prediction so that they kind of know or expected where the study will go. So for example macam we'll use this example yang driving ni lah because it's easier. So for example macam Miss kan buat studying about driving skill, right? So I predicted from the beginning sudah, I predicted okay, definitely male is a better driver than female. Okay, so that is my hypothesis. It's limited evidence pasal I haven't collected the data, I haven't conducted the investigation yet, but I have to make the prediction. Okay, so if you see the second bullet point there, hypotheses are precise, it's testable statement. So hypothesis ini it's a statement saja, macam just a statement saying that okay, this will happen in this study. Okay, it should be precise, meaning that it should be clear apa yang you predicted, atau it shouldn't be vague. So if you see my prediction today, I said man is a better driver than female. So people are clear that okay, yani this researcher predicted that male is a better driver. Okay, so it should be precise, it should be testable, it should be something that boleh kena test. So a good hypothesis are the ones yang clear, precise, and testable. Okay? Now the next slide, I will teach you the different types of hypothesis that we have. Alright, now there are three types of hypothesis that you need to know. Non-directional, also called as two-tailed. Directional hypothesis, also called as one-tailed. And the third one is null hypothesis. Okay, so I'm gonna go through each one of it one by one and I will give you example. Now it might be quite difficult to really grasp the differences, especially for non-directional hypothesis sama directional, because it's kan sama. So use the example, really analyze the example that I give atau to make sense of apa difference between non-directional and non-directional and directional. Okay? Okay, now the first hypothesis that I wanted to explain is non-directional. So let's go through the definition. This is the hypothesis that predicts there will be an effect, but not its direction. So it suggests that the IV will change the DV, but not whether the effect will be an increase or decrease. So if you see, terus ada example there. This is an example of non-directional hypothesis. It's a prediction made where it says that there is a difference between the effectiveness of mind maps and revision apps in helping students to learn. Okay, now first thing dulu, you need to identify the IVs and DVs dulu in this statement. So if you see there, between the effectiveness of mind maps and revision app. So you can see that IV-nya sana, yang they manipulated is the mind map versus the revision apps. Okay, that's the IV tu. The DV-nya, they wanted to see if the mind map sama revision apps ni will affect student to learn atau. Artinya they want to see which one can help the student better. Is it mind map ataupun revision apps? So mind map and revision apps is ia punya IV, DV-nya is student punya learning. Okay, the learning of the student. Okay, so now if you see here, it's a non-directional because if you go back at her definitionnya, there will be an effect. So if you see there, our example, back to the example, it says that there is a difference between the effectiveness of mind map and revision apps. So they clearly state that mind map sama revision apps ni somehow helps the student to learn. Okay? But if you go back our definition, you go back up, but not its direction. Direction ni artinya, they don't tell which one is better. They don't say that mind map ni lagi better daripada revision app, or they don't say revision app lagi better daripada mind map. They just say that both have an effect, tapi they don't say which one is higher than the other one, which one is more effective than the other one. Okay, so that's why it's non-direction. Ia macam ia beritahu that this IV ni ia affects DV-nya, tapi ia tidak tahu direction-nya. Is it IV like sebutan ni yang lagi higher or lagi effective, or the other IVs? Okay, now let's compare it with the next slide on directional hypothesis. Okay, maybe it's more clear if we compare it with that. Okay, now directional hypothesis, if you see here, it can be used when most previous research or other evidences suggest the nature or direction of an effect. So usually directional hypothesis ni, it's when the researcher are confident sudah that the IV will have an increase atau decrease on the DV atau usually kalau ada previous data, then they would be confident to predict the direction. Kalau macam belum ada data from previous study, they would rather go safe and go with the non-directional hypothesis. Okay, now if you see, we're using still the same example of IVs and DVs, but can you see apa difference-nya here? Directional statement-nya lain tu. Student using revision apps will learn better than student using mind map. So tadi, there will be a difference, right, sejak between revision and mind map in student learning. But here, it's a directional pasal. You see here, you get tahu which one would be better. You cakap using revision using revision apps. Okay, using revision apps will make student learn better compared to pakai mind map. So in this case, you get a direction. You get that, okay, revision apps lagi effective daripada mind map. So hence, that's why this kind of statement ni, yang ada direction ni, it's what we call as directional hypothesis. Kalau non-directional, ia tidak beritahu mana satu IV lagi effective or lagi tinggi efeknya. Okay? So I hope it's a bit clear there. So just lihat saja ia punya statement atau there's a difference tu. You can see there's a clear difference between non-directional and directional. Directional ada direction. Ia beritahu mana satu variable lagi higher than the other one. Kalau non-directional, they just say ada effect saja. Tapi they don't really say, they don't point the direction. They don't say satu ni lagi tinggi daripada the other one. Okay? So yeah. Okay, now the third type of hypothesis is null hypothesis. So this one is the easiest one because it's totally different from directional and non-directional. Null hypothesis ini, it null means zero. Okay, so artinya they predicted that there's no differences, like the IV inda affects the DV at all. Okay, and then if you see at the bullet point, any differences in the DV between the IV, it's so small that it could arisen by chance. So meaning that either IV-nya doesn't affect DV-nya, or IV-nya affect DV-nya but it's such a small effect saja that it's not significant, okay, that it could arisen by chance saja. So null hypothesis mean you are predicting that there's no effect. Like IV itu nada kena mengena dengan DV itu, ia indah mengacau DV itu at all. Okay, so null hypothesis means that the IV does not have any effect on the DV at all, and even if there's an effect, it's too small for it to be significant. Okay, so if you look at the example there will be no difference between the effectiveness of mind maps and revision apps in helping students to learn. So basically, it was predicted that both mind maps and revision app ini, it's not helping the student to learn at all. Okay, so that's what null hypothesis mean lah. Artinya you're predicting that IV-nya langsung ada effect on the DV itu. Okay, so kalau directional, non-directional, both have an effect on the DV, tapi satu ada direction, satu nada. Kalau null hypothesis, nada effect, IV-nya indah affecting the DV at all. Okay, so hopefully it's clear. Again, if it's not clear, you can always ask me for help. So just kalau payah, analyze the example that I give here and then go back to the definition and try to figure out macam mana it's connected to one another. Okay, now okay, so here is an exercise for you to do just to test whether you really understand what I've been teaching. It's the writing hypothesis exercise, so there's 5 questions there. Now, for every question, I want you to come up with directional hypothesis, non-directional hypothesis, and null hypothesis. So, for every question, you should have 3 types of hypothesis, okay? Now, to make it easier for you, I'm gonna give away the answer for the first question as example, okay? So, first question, does caffeine increase awareness? So first thing that you do is, before you write up the hypothesis, you need to identify IVs and DVs nya dulu. So in this case, for the first question, IV-nya is caffeine or non-caffeine. So it should be IV-nya people who drink caffeine and people who do not drink caffeine. Okay, DV-nya is awareness, whether it's increase ka, decrease ka. Okay, so awareness level, that would be ia punya DV. Now, once you have identified IVs and DVs, baru tah sanang tu you will write up the hypothesis. So, for example, kalau directional, I teach you today directional artinya IV-nya affects DV-nya, and there's also a direction. There's also a direction which one is higher, the first variable atau the second variable. So in this case, if I want to make a directional hypothesis, I would say participant who drinks caffeine will have an increased awareness compared to those who did not drink caffeine. Okay, so if you see from that statement, it's clear that I'm saying siapa minum caffeine lagi tinggi awarenessnya compared to orang yang indah minum caffeine. Okay, so I'm saying IV-nya affects DV-nya, and I'm also giving the direction. Okay, kalau non-directional tadi I teach you, there's an effect, tapi the statement will not state which one is higher, the first variable atau the second variable. Okay, so in this case, kalau non-directional, I would write there will be a difference in the awareness of the participant who drink caffeine and those who did not drink caffeine. Okay, so artinya I'm saying that okay, both yang minum caffeine sama indah minum caffeine ni, there will be a difference in terms of dorang punya awareness. But I don't really say siapa lagi more aware. siapa lagi have a higher awareness. I don't say yang minum caffeine ataupun yang tidak minum caffeine. Okay, so that's why it's a non-directional. I'm just saying that there will be a difference for those who drinks caffeine and not drinking caffeine in terms of awareness. Okay, so it's non-directional. I did not give a direction in that statement. And then kalau null hypothesis, then after sanang, I just say that there will be no difference in the awareness of people who drink caffeine and people who do not drink caffeine. So kalau null tu sanang saja, you just buat say there will be no difference saja. There's no difference between drinking caffeine to increasing awareness. Okay, so null hypothesis should be easier to write, but just directional sama non-directional tu can be a bit confusing. Okay, but just go ahead and try saja. So like do the steps of identifying IVs and DVs dulu. Okay, identify IVs and DVs dulu, then baru tak sanang you guys connect tu ia punya the effects. Okay, so I leave the rest of the question in the 4 question to you to do. Now this one is to be done tomorrow during the lesson. So I'm going to give you the whole lesson to write up this exercise and also the next question also. So there's 2 exercises for you to do tomorrow. So you can, if you have time, you can start doing the hypothesis. But if hindi pun, you can just do it tomorrow. Okay, so again, if you have difficulty, you can always text me up. All right. Okay, so another term that I need you to learn is operationalization. Okay, now operationalization it's a term described when a variable is defined and measured by the researcher, and this operationalization, it is applied to IVs and DVs. Okay, so all IVs and DVs it needs to be operationalized. Okay, so for example here I give a problem solving abilities and younger adults. So in my study, I wanted to investigate about younger adults punya problem solving ability. Okay, so how do I do it is I need to operationalize the IVs and DVs first. So I have problem solving ability as one of my variables and younger adult as my other variable. But then these two balum lagi misoperationalize. So operationalize means you have to define it. Okay? Define upper array problem solving ability. Define what specific problem solving ability do I want to measure in my study. Or kalau younger adults, I have to define younger adults tadi specifically siapa. Okay? So, to operationalize problem solving ability, it's problem solving ini banyak, right? You can test problem solving in a lot of ways. So, in this case, to operationalize it, I'm gonna measure problem solving ability by giving the participant a puzzle, and then I will take the time that they took to complete the puzzle. Okay, so berapa lama ia complete a puzzle, that would indicate problem solving ability. Okay, so to operationalize problem solving ability, I specifically measured their time to complete a puzzle. And then for younger adults, I define it by stating that younger adults are 15 years old to 18 years old. Okay, so I operationalize younger adults to 15 to 18 years old. Now operationalization it's up to the researcher how they define it. Okay, because it's their study. So kalau macam young adults to me is 15 to 18, then 15 to 18. But other researcher might say younger adults may be like 18 to 20. That's fine. That's up to the researcher. Okay? So operationalization, it's up to the researcher to define how they wanted to do it. Like problem solving ability. Other researcher might say, okay, problem solving ability, time taken to complete a maths question. That's up to the researcher. So, atu caranya ia measure the variables, okay? So, again, operationalization and it needs to be done to the IVs and the DV. So that IV sama DV-nya can be measured. So you have to define the variables first. Okay. Now, this is another classwork for you to do just to test whether you know how to operationalize or not. Now, you don't have to Google the answer, okay? You think of yourself as a researcher. These are the variables that you want to research on, okay? You want to study this variable yang empat ani. But you haven't operationalized it. So your task here is you have to define macam mana you're gonna measure each variable. You have to define like macam older adults. Older adults, what do you think? What would be the age that you think older adults are kalau in your study? Okay? So this is from your point of view. As long as your answer makes sense, then it should be correct. Okay? So you don't have to be specific Google, okay, older adults ni berapa umurnya. It's not up to Google. This is you. You are the researcher. You have to define your own variable in it. Okay? Define it macam mana. Like stress. How are you gonna measure stress? Like you wanted to study about stress, but stress ni banyak kan. Like a person kalau ia stress, you can see in different ways. So specifically, how are you gonna measure stress? How would you know if that person is stressed or not? Okay, so macam maybe stress. I would measure stress by what? Maybe I would measure stress by counting how long that does the person smile. Okay, can also, because kalau orang stress, they don't really smile. Okay, so do it for the other variables there. Older adults, intelligent, how are you gonna measure intelligent? Aggression from children in a playground, how are you gonna measure it? Okay, so again, this one is to be done tomorrow together with the writing hypothesis. Okay, so as of today, you can just think of the answers je dulu, and if it's payah, you can always text me up. Okay, so that would be it for today. We have covered about hypothesis on operationalization. I know the content might be a bit confusing, so take your time. If you have to listen back. Kalau masih juga tak faham, always text me up, okay? Alright, so that's it for today. I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow, okay?